You ever think you've hit rock bottom, only to find out the floor's got a trap door? That was me standing in the wreckage of my old house, thinking the worst thing that could happen was losing everything to a bunch of HOA clowns with too much time and too many lawyers. But man, turns out that was just the opening act. Because this time it wasn't letters or threats. It was a busted door, the sickening sound of wood splintering, and a whole different kind of battle. And the craziest part, the so-called guest staying in my spare room. Someone who changed everything. If you've ever been chewed up by an HOA or had some self-important clipboard warrior, try to run your life. You're going to get this. Trust me. Name's Dylan, 35, residential electrician. 15 years of wiring homes. Fixing the things people think can't be fixed, backup power, off-grid setups, you name it. I always figure if I knew my stuff, nobody could touch me. Funny, right? Because all it takes is one petty tyrant with a rule book and a chip on their shoulder, and you're toast whether your wires are perfect or not. Let me back up a sec. 3 years ago, I lost my last house, a smart cabin with every electrical bell and whistle, because my so-called innovations broke some unauthorized energy infrastructure rule. I fought burned through every dollar I had on lawyers. Lost anyway. The day I packed up those HOA suits, just sat in their black SUVs, watching like it was some show. I'll never forget pulling the last wire, feeling like I was yanking out pieces of my own heart. So, when I found this cabin at the edge of a sleepy suburb, solid, wired up with enough space in my gear, it felt like a second chance. Even if the listing did say managed community, I figured I could keep my head down, and they'd leave me alone. Right. The first month was peaceful. Just me, the smell of sawdust, the quiet hum of the inverter. Then Brenda showed up. Brenda, 55 ex-bank manager, always dressed like she was headed to court, eyes like she could spot a missing dime from a 100 yards. "Just call me Brenda," she said with a smile so cold it could shore battery. Neighborhood gossip called her the HOA witch, and she lived up to it, believe me. Started with courtesy visits about my conduit lines not being aesthetic or my battery housing disrupting neighborhood uniformity. Yeah, that's a direct quote. I tried to laugh it off until the violation notices started. Immediate compliance required, or else. I'll admit my hand shook the first time I saw her urgent letter. All that old panic from the last house came roaring back. So, I did what I should have done years ago. I sat down, poured a whiskey, and read every word of the HOA's rule book. If you've never done that, imagine trying to read an IRS manual written by someone who hates sunlight and common sense. Still, I found loopholes, protections buried in the legalese. Didn't matter. Brenda started delivering threats in person, tossing around phrases like stronger enforcement measures. Her eyes, man, you'd think she was auditioning for a villain role. I double-checked every lock that night. Wondered if I should just give in, repaint my breaker panel, let her win. But there's only so many times you can be pushed before you snap. And then right in the middle of my mess comes Garrett. Shows up in a white shirt that probably cost more than my month's groceries, introduces himself with a handshake and an official badge. Federal investigator, currently on leave hunting utility fraud. Needed a quiet spot to lay low. I should have said no, but something about him just felt solid. The way he looked at Brenda, you'd swear he could see through her. Still, I checked him out. No social, no digital footprint, nothing. Either he was the real deal, or I just let a ghost rent my guest room. The twist Garrett got curious about the HOA docs Brenda kept delivering. One night, he studied my violation letters like they're evidence in a murder case, then tells me dead serious. These inspection forms are forged. The digital signatures, they're fake. I laughed, thought he was messing with me. He wasn't. He showed me forensic details on his phone, walked me through tampering marks. Turns out Brenda wasn't just a petty tyrant. She was breaking federal law to get me out. It hit me all at once. This wasn't about aesthetics. It was about power-using rules as weapons. That night, I closed the rule book and stared into the dark, realized it was never about the wiring. It was about who gets to decide whose home stays standing. And for the first time, I had someone in my corner who actually knew the playbook. A few quiet days went by. Brenda must have seen Garrett around and gotten spooked. Then she came back more official than ever, clutching an envelope and demanding full disclosure of my guest's activities. Claimed my temporary guest was operating an unapproved technical service, cited some obscure section about occupancy changes. I wanted to laugh in her face, but she just kept pushing. That's when Garrett stepped out onto the porch. Calm as you like. Says unauthorized inspection attempts on private systems violate multiple codes. Ma'am, you really want to push this? Brenda pawed, clutched her clipboard like a shield, muttered threats as she stormed off, snapping pictures of my workshop like she was building a case. The next day, the real siege began. Security cameras mounted on utility poles, aimed right at my outdoor panel. Every move I made, the lens tracked me. I'd hear it hum in the quiet, following me to the shed, the breaker box, even just getting my mail. Garrett called it what it was, targeted surveillance. And when he draped a towel over the camera, Brenda called within 5 minutes, screaming about obstructing community safety equipment. Then came the power cut. Out of nowhere, my electricity goes dead. The power company claims the HOA flagged me for unauthorized grid connections. 6 hours in the dark. Spoiled food lost computer work. When the lights flickered back, I was shaking with rage. Hands on my tools, ready to fight or run. But Garrett kept digging. In the HOA's financials, he found receipts for electrical upgrades that never happened. Thousands spent on contractors who didn't exist. And then out of nowhere, a neighbor I barely knew, Mr. Peterson, caught me at the mailbox and whispered, "Not everyone on the board agrees with what Brenda's doing. She's gone too far." He vanished before I could ask more, but it was the first sign that I wasn't crazy. That maybe, just maybe, the tide was turning. Armed with proof of document tampering, fraud, and targeted harassment, Garrett laid it all out on my kitchen table. We had a case. But Brenda, she wasn't done. The next morning, her version of enforcement showed up her 2 HOA maintenance guys, a utility truck, and an official-sounding code. They pounded on my door, announced a mandatory electrical safety inspection, and when I refused, they broke down my workshop door with a crowbar. Wires, screws, everything I'd built scattered across the floor. Brenda strutted in, waving her clipboard, declaring herself the authority. It would have been funny if it hadn't been so infuriating. And just when I thought things couldn't get any more surreal, the police rolled up, called apparently because someone reported an abandoned infrastructure dispute. I tried to explain, but the young cop just looked at me like I was nuts. Then he turned to Garrett, demanding ID. For a split second, I wondered if this was it, if my federal agent guess was about to be exposed. But Garrett unfolded his badge, slow and deliberate, and everything shifted. Suddenly, Brenda was the one sweating. Garrett laid out all the evidence audio of Brenda plotting document fraud video, of her ordering the break-in stacks of forged permits. One of the cops muttered, "Holy hell." Brenda's face went from smug to panic to outright collapse. When the cuffs clicked shut, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Relief, vindication, justice, even if only for a moment. As Brenda was stuffed into the back of a cruiser, Garrett leaned over, voice low. "This is the easy part. Someone paid her to push this hard. And I don't think they're done yet." That's when I realized this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The fallout massive. Neighbors I'd never met showed up with their own stories. Turns out Brenda had bullied the entire block for years. Fines for solar panels, for motion lights, for things that only made sense if you were looking to control, not protect. The new HOA board tossed every one of her rules, moved a security camera to the entrance, and for the first time, the neighborhood started to feel normal. But you know what part of me kept waiting for the other shoe to drop? Then weeks later, Garrett came clean. My cabin, my whole mess. It was part of a bigger sting, an organized fraud operation. Fake upgrades, launder money, all under the shield of community safety. My broken door was a thread that unraveled a network spanning 3 states, leading to a dozen arrests. Brenda was just upon one who finally paid for crossing the line. She got prison time restitution. Her mugshot in the HOA newsletter. Ironic, right? I took the busted door, mounted it in a steel frame, welded a sign. Boundary crossed here. Line restored. Every time I see it, I remember you can't let people like Brenda win. Not with wires, not with fear, not with fake rules. Now I run a tiny legal aid clinic, helping folks fight back when the rule book's used as a weapon. So what about you? Ever stood up to someone drunk on authority? Had your own Brenda moment? Drop your story below. Maybe, just maybe, we can start drawing the lines that actually matter together. And if you stuck with me through all that, well, you know what I mean.